Hello, I'm Jackson from Step by Step Effects. So this episode is gonna be maybe part one of numerous episodes on different types of drug effects. Some will be in camera, some will be in editing. I'll be using After Effects, but you can take these ideas and use any software you can think of to do a similar effect. Alright, so this effect is a lot of trial and error, except the error isn't an error because there's no way to do it wrong or right. I'm doing a lot of random stuff. I was just kind of playing around, and that's how I came up with a lot of this stuff. None of it's complicated. There's a lot of different things you can do. From the preview you saw, I have various different types of effects, and that's kind of what this is. So this is a pretty long video of me editing, and I'm just keeping it slightly unedited, just so you can see the different things you can do and the different effects it pulls off, because some I don't use in the final test footage, but is still valuable to know if you like how that looks. Now this is a texture, a photo of inside a fire pit that I took a long time ago in a folder I have of just textures that have come in handy quite a lot ever since years ago when I made that. So you don't have to use the royalty-free textures or paid ones or ones with watermarks in front of it. So what I'm doing with this texture is I'm gonna warp it and add keyframes to the warp so it moves, and I'm gonna change the hue and saturation as time progresses. And here I'm adding a lot of contrast and just trying to make it look abstract and interesting. The test footage, the effect would look a lot different if I used different textures, and I would even suggest maybe instead of a picture of a texture or of anything, because you're warping it, so you could really use any starting point, maybe using a video instead. So then, because I'm creating the movement with the warp, but if you had a warp and camera movement or a motion as the plate we're using here, then that could be a cool effect. There's no rhyme or reason for any of this. I'm just seeing what could look cool and testing things out. So this Luma key, it acts as like a green screen, except there's no green screen, and so I think it's basing it on light. So like the widest stuff is acting as if it's a green screen, and obviously you wouldn't want to use this for most things because it's random and uncalculated and kind of screwing up with the footage. But you know, that's kind of what we want here. We want something psychedelic and abstract and weird. This part isn't even necessary. Like you can do this effect without this at all. I think it adds to it. You can do all completely the other steps, or you could do it just this. Like if you like how this looks, and you know, and add some warping to the original footage a bit more. You know, or this effect could be used for like a music video, because it's just, you know, there's no way to do it wrong, just as long as it looks cool. That's kind of the point. Just copied and pasted a lot of keyframes just to keep the colors changing and to keep the movement. No rhyme or reason for that. I'm not calculated at all because it doesn't matter, and this was a test, you know. This isn't like an LSD or an acid or mushrooms or anything in particular. It's just random, you know, just, you know, a random made up drug, you know, or it could be anything. If you've done psychedelics, maybe you have a better idea of what effect is more like the actual experience. That'd be pretty cool if you replicated that. I don't know if any of these techniques really work for that, but you know, I guess So you can see I'm experimenting with different blending modes. There I put overlay. Throughout the video I change it. I'm testing things out. I like a lot of different effects. There's no wrong, there's no right. Obviously this isn't so good because I took off the Luma key, I think, so it's just going over everything. Maybe if you'd expand the size of the texture warp movement frame, if you expand that, like scale that up way bigger, and then keyframe, put it in a 3D space and keyframe it to a certain position. If the position is always in the camera, here I'm panning around and stuff, so it wouldn't work super well. But that would make it so that it's not clearly an overlaid footage over another piece of footage. And that's why the Luma key that I just put back on, because I came to my senses, that's why the Luma key works so well, is because, you know, it doesn't look like it's just an overlay on it, necessarily. And that's also, that's what I'm doing. I scaled it up, and I'm just moving it around randomly, just to keep the movement, to make it not look like I'm just putting a blending mode over moving footage. And maybe if you'd want the movement that you keyframe to match the movement of the camera, the speed, maybe you want to do that. I didn't do that. There's an idea. Here I'm keyframing the amount of Luma key, the threshold. I'm keyframing that to change depending on where I am in the room, because over there by the chair there's a lot less bright white. If I'm correct, if that's what the key it's trying to key out, I'm not quite sure. It seems like it. So I increase the threshold, or or decrease it, so that it's not looking like regular footage, and to keep it consistent throughout. See there, I have the threshold all the way down, and that's kind of a cool look. And if you have the keyframe movement without the Luma key, basically it's without Luma key, it seems like. That actually doesn't look bad. That actually looks kind of cool, and I think that's a usable effect if the movement of your texture is good enough. So I added a vignette lighting effect. Wasn't familiar with this effect before until I put it on, and I chose two colors there randomly, and I really dug how this looked. You know, I don't know how to describe it. I guess, it's not psychedelic in a randomness. It's not random at all. You can see how it's picking parts of objects in the frame to apply itself to. And there you can see it's pixelated and stuff, and that's partly because of the lower quality preview screen, but also you can add a feather to that, or a Gaussian blur or something like I do, and make it so that it doesn't look so pixelated like that. Though if you're making some futuristic-y type glitch, like a world, like a simulation where there's glitches, this effect, I could see that working really well for that. Maybe adding pixelated would even be better. The CC radial blur, I think, adds a ton to it. I think it's very important and makes it look a lot more interesting, a lot more warped visual, warped perception. And I keep in the footage of me adding the Gaussian blur, because I just want to show a lot of different things you can do that I don't necessarily do. And here's my favorite part of the effect that you don't see as much in the final product, because I don't think it works as well as a psychedelic effect, but I really do love the effect. I scaled it up and moved the position, and since the effect shows the colors, the red and green, mostly green, to objects, it looks like it's in 3D space. It looks like it's a 3D rendering at certain points, especially with the heater there, because I've displaced it with the scaling up and the different positioning, and I really dig that effect. Here I'm applying the effects from the footage we were just working on onto this different test footage clip. I wanted to try not just one clip, but a very different clip. It's a very different, wall colors and depth, and I move around a lot in this clip, and it shows how the effects on that clip, how they can look different on different clips, and how you can adjust them to fit on different clips. And you can see I love the first frame there, but obviously it fades out there, which means like the threshold and that sort of thing you'll wanna edit. You can see it comes back up occasionally, and you can get it to, like we did earlier with, when I panned to the chair, where I increased or lowered the threshold to create more of an effect where it was showing up less. You can do the same thing here, but I thought this looked pretty cool. I was pretty happy with this. This would be a great music video effect, I feel like. A lot of different things you can do with this. I'm jumping around quite a lot here, because I'll have a different idea of a type of effect that just hits me. So here I'm going back to the first clip to edit more of that, and I already turned off the levels, and that's an interesting effect there too. That the doubling effect also could be useful for something. That looks like, you know, maybe you don't have contacts in. I've never needed glasses. I know that's not how it works. Maybe it works for some conditions. But you know, when you cross your eyes and you see double, or maybe like you know, you're beaten in the head and you wake up and you're all dizzy, and that effect could be used there. I did not have that on there long to see, but that could be pretty cool. I'm doing a lot of random stuff that applies to a lot of different effects and techniques. So if you can just watch what I do, and if you like something, if something stands out, you can use that and just apply that one aspect of this lesson. There, I changed the blending mode. Of course, it gives a different effect. This one's a lot stronger and vibrant and contrasty. The texture shows out a lot more. So if you like that, then, you know, there you go. And difference is that blending mode on there. That gives it that more textured effect. So I'm rearranging a lot of footage and silencing clips to mash things together. And I don't stick around with a lot of these effects, but you could see how they could be cool if I would have kept going with that and made that one of the final effects. And here I finally add the radial blur, not just to the texture or the effect in front, but to the footage itself, because you don't want to just put psychedelic textures and colors and imagery over footage, but you also want the footage to be warped itself. And there I add a turbulent displaced twirl and keyframe that so that moves around. Also, the camera's moving, so it's going to be warping on its own. So you don't necessarily need to keyframe that, but if it's not a static shot, but I thought I would. And there I'm trying to get the right amount, get a good amount of. It's all up to taste, the amount of warping you want to do, and all up to the intensity of the psychedelic experience, or how abstract you want to go with it. But I want you to still be able to see what all the objects are, and also see the distortion. So I was finding that balance. Here I'm just experimenting with the radial blur. I like that effect. I liked how that looked. That'd be a cool, like, alien or monster POV point of view. Maybe some sort of animal or creature's perspective, you know, going through a forest or something like that. You could use it for that. That's an idea. Maybe for a dream sequence, you know, before I just applied that on. it kind of had like a vignetting effect of the texture. You could use that for a dream sequence or something. I don't really like it. I kind of hate vignettes. But there you go. That looks pretty neat. I'm into that. Of course, I get away from that very quickly, but that's something I should remember. Now I'm going back to the first clip, the first piece of footage I used, adding the twirl turbulent displacement to that. Changing the blending mode to overlay. Overlay is a very reliable blending mode. It's hard not to like that one. There I had a fade in, like the effects is kicking in very quickly, strangely quickly, but there you go. I don't love how it looks with the transparency added to it, the transparency lowered, or the opacity. And there you can see is the most abstract of the effect I use, especially when I take the opacity up to 100. It looks very abstract. You can see stuff from the clip until I add that radial blur, and then here you can see it's pretty abstract and crazy. And you know, I could see it in a museum art installation where they had little theater rooms, something like that. It kind of looks like a Jacques Olivier thing where he there I took that frame and made a fake album cover of it. And here it goes through the video clip I just showed of the abstract clip. I'm applying that with different blending modes to the original clip with turbulent displacement on it. And there you can see how you can use this effect in so many different ways and use the technique in a billion different ways, and just whatever you like, use that. This one is the favorite. I love this one. Definitely going to use this on some project. And there you go. That is and there you go. That's it for this video. And there's endless ways to create drug effects, so there may be more episodes to come while I experiment and try out more effects.